Welcome to the Cartoon Club. My name is Jack. In this episode, I'll be showing you how to draw a river and a bridge in 1-point perspective. Drawing anything natural like a river or a field or trees is a lot easier than drawing something like a building because it doesn't really require too much math. But with the 1-point perspective, we still have to determine where the river's going to go. So firstly, if we place our guidelines of the river, I've placed a point in the middle, so that's our vanishing point that we did, and I've also created a line going across, and this is the horizon where the river will end, and the bridge will go in front of it, so we will see part of this line. So I've just kept it there roughly for when we need it later. So what I'm going to do is place my ruler onto that vanishing point and find an angle that I like, and this won't be the actual angle of the river in terms of the straight line, but it will be the guideline where we're going to curve and undulate the river around. So that's going to be our right bank of the river. And then if I do the same thing on the other side, just finding a point that I like. So that's going to be the width of our river from our view. And like I said, these aren't going to be the lines that we're going to finish with because a river will be natural, so it won't be this straight embankment that we see there. Unless we've got a canal will obviously be built straight because it's man-made. So these walls would continue up, but what we want is a natural look to it. But before we do that, we need to add in the placement of where the bridge is going to be, because then we know where to work the river around. So we need to find 2 points on either side of the embankment that we want to add, and I'm going to do a arch bridge, so a curved arch stone bridge, sort of like a Roman bridge. So what I'm going to do is find those 2 points on my page and add them in. So our 2 points have been added here. So I'll just mark those two again just to make it clear. So these 2 points are going to be where the bridge is going to curve around. So this is the lower part of the bridge. And then from above that curve, we're going to create the top part of the bridge. So almost the walking part. And I've created this line here because this line is going to almost set the reflection mark of where the bridge is going to be. And because we're going to be on quite still water, and if we're quite low down to the water as well, looking down almost reflects everything above it. So we need to know where this arch is going to go, and later we need to determine where the height is in order to flip the image around and create that reflection underneath as well. So I've added that line in across, bridging those 2 points. They are the same height from the page as well, just to make it clear. And then what I'm going to do is find a curve to add in. What I'm going to say with this one, I'm going to make it quite a natural sort of dilapidated bridge, so it's sort of falling apart. So it's not going to be the cleanest lines, and the stones themselves are going to be sort of cobblestoned, so quite big chunky stones. Like I said earlier, I want to show a bit of this river behind, so what I'm going to do is have a high point somewhere above that line, and then I'm just going to sketch in the curve, joining those 2 points that I've made together. So from that, we know that the high point is somewhere in this middle. So from there, we need to determine the height from that line that we've created earlier to the high point of the arch. So from there, in my one, it's about 7.5, going from that point up to that high point. So we just do the same thing going down. So with that, I need to find about 7.5. So I'll mark that down there, and it's just the exact same on the other side. You can sure to follow the arch that we set above as well. And now we've got the arch added in, we're going to be adding some perspective to the inside of the arch. So we're going to be using that same point again and just continuing down to the downwards point of that arch along that line. So we'll just match the point up and the point at the bottom of the arch and add in a line along there, and then we'll do the same on the other side. So these 2 lines will show the thickness of the bridge as well, so we need to determine how thick we want that bridge to go. So if I pick a point that I like, what I'll do is I'll go 2.5 centimeters up, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side, picking 2.5 centimeters upwards. And then from there, I'm just going to join those 2 lines together again. So we've now got the thickness of the bridge, and then with the marks that we've just created, we're going to create a secondary arch that's joining those 2 points together, just to create that 3D form of an arch shape underneath. And then what we're going to do is create the same thing below as well. So we need to flip along that central line again. So we need to know the distance between this line and the top of that arch, flip it and then add it down below to create the reflection on that side. So we determined the height of that arch away from the end, but with the shadows, if the sun is, let's say, behind us, sort of in this point here, the light will be coming down and hitting the edge of that arch, which will make that high point on the reflection. But these lines will continue from the closest point to the light source as well. So this arch is the bit that's closest to the sun, and because of that, this line will also be the closest thing to the sun as well. So this whole thing is the underneath of the bridge, casting a shadow towards us. So the rest of the bridge is going to be quite extended forward because of that. So just adding in that. Otherwise, if the sun was directly above, then this shadow would just be a straight line across. And if the sun was on this side, then the shadow would be going further back into the river. So I've decided just to create the shadow coming this way, so place the sun behind us almost. So now on to the detailing part of things. What I want to do is create a sort of angled embankment to the river as well, so the arch is cutting into the river itself. So with that, we're just going to use that lower point that we've got and just continue it somewhat diagonally up into the side of the page. So don't make it neat or straight because the river's going to be angled and jagged. And I'm just going to do the same on the other side, just pick in a sort of shape that we like. And like I said earlier, these lines aren't going to be the lines that we're following, because we're going to create some more curves to make it more natural and fleshed out. So with that, we want that river to be the point where those stones are, but we want to continue the line sort of going round, and to make sure the lines are bigger and chunkier the closer you get to the camera as well, just because we are closer to the objects that we see on that river. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the secondary arch to that arch on the bridge, just because this will be the big stones that are holding the bridge together, and I'll be right back with that. So I've created that secondary arch, and I've added in some lines to mark where the stones are going to go. So with the stones on an arch, the inside part is always going to be smaller than the outside part of the stone, just because when the stones are then placed together, the inside part will naturally create a curve to it as well. And I've only roughly created the markings for where the stones are, because later on we'll be going into adding some details to those stones, but they will be the biggest ones because they will carry the most weight on that bridge. And then all the stones that are going to be inside this arch are going to be smaller and straighter because it no longer needs the curve to sustain height. Speaking of the height, what we're going to do is we are going to add in the line for where the top of the bridge is going to go. So that's down to you how high you want that bridge to be, really. I'm going to create it somewhat high, about, and mark it sort of roughly. I'm going to say the high point would be about here, I think. So what would that be? Along our central line, that is 12.5 centimeters up. So having this line is helpful, because if we want to create a straight line, I'll just mark 12.5 on another part of that line, add that in, and maybe do the same on the other side as well. 12.5 up and mark. Now I've got a perfectly straight line based on the line that we created earlier. Then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move it slightly off onto that side as well. So that is now the mark for where our top of our bridge is going to go. What I'm going to do now on this top one is place another lot of big stones. This isn't important to the bridge, but it's just going to create somewhat of a lip that it can be added onto. So with that, I'm going to create stones about the same size as the arch stones, but it's only for decoration. It's got nothing to do with the bridge's construction. It's just something that makes the bridge look a bit different from the top as well as the bottom. So there you go, the line's been added there and these stones have been placed in. There's still a sketch, so it's going to be more refined when we get to adding in a bit of detail to those. And onto the stones that are in the middle, this is now also entirely up to what you feel is best. What I'm going to do is create some sort of brick kind of work where each brick is half a way across from the one above, sort of how you see like a house building. But because I want it a little bit older looking, I'm going to create them in almost like a very jagged kind of way. I'll still kind of create the same thickness, so what I'm going to do quickly is add in some rows that I want, just to help me when it comes to adding in those brickwork. So I'm just going to do that off screen. I'll be right back with that one as well. So those lines have all been added in. What I didn't say earlier is that this main stone is 1.5 centimeters tall, and these are now 1. So these bricks are going to be smaller than the main top stones that I've added in. And what I'm going to do is add in that brickwork effect that I said I was going to do. What I need to do is find a point where I've got more than 3 lines, just because from then on I can set the groundwork of each one that follows. Like I said, they won't be perfectly neat. They will be a bit jagged and a bit broken, so if I sway on the size of the bricks, that's not the end of the world for me. Otherwise though, you can just use your ruler to get as clean the lines as you want. If you want a newer bridge, then yes, every brick's going to be perfectly spaced. But if I want somewhat of an older design, I will give a bit of leeway to my brickwork. And what I'll use is either this side here or this side to create those central lines to help me first. What I'm going to do is use this side though. I'm going to try and stay away from this line up here because I don't want it to look like it's set in that sort of part. I know it sounds daft, but I don't want the lines to look like they continue down from that top bit, just because starting somewhere else will make it look more natural going across. So I'm going to create it nearer those mark points that I've set really. So I'm going to start with one line up here, give a space, and then create another line, space, another line, space, another line, and so on and so forth. Then from there I've got my verticals for the top row and the third and the fifth, and now I need to go for the even number of rows. It's almost like stitching really. It looks like it's sort of going in and out of each other, the lines. So I'll create the other line somewhat away from those lines I've just set, and that's on the second, the fourth, the sixth, and the eighth. Then if I do the opposite side, trying to stay away from that line if I can help it, second, fourth, sixth, eighth, and then a little bit on the 10th. So there's that first brick already making shape. And do the first, third, fifth, seventh, ninth, and now we've got 2 bricks. So it's just continuing this across the entire bridge. So what I'm going to do is speed that up because that's quite a boring process to watch, every brick being done. So I'm going to be right back. So that is the brickwork done along the front face of that bridge. And now I'm going to move on to the inside part of this bridge as well. So this is where the 1-point perspective comes into play again. So I know the bottom parts of those bricks, and with those markings down towards the bottom here, I'll be using my 1-point perspective just to line that up. And so the line going across will be the straight line for the bridge. So I'm just going to go in and add a few of those. So if I show you the first few and then go to the rest. So just placing my ruler down, placing it up with that bottom point of the brickwork and with the vanishing point, and then just drawing the line across the arch part of the bridge. So from there I know that's the thickness of that brick going all the way around. Just create the next 2, because we'll be doing the same thing we did with those bricks up on the front face of the bridge. So there's the next line, and then I'll create one more. So that's 3 rows that we have there, and depending on how big you want those bricks, I'm just going to create the same sort of thickness that I did for these ones up here. So just splitting them into, I would say, 3. Then the next row up here, it will go halfway across that one. halfway across that one again, and a little bit onto that edge. And then the one up higher will be the same thing, halfway across that one, halfway across that one. And see, following the curve of the arch itself, depending on how smooth you want your stones, you can have them quite jagged. I think I probably will do that later on, but there's just a demonstration of those bricks that are inside. So I'm just going to do the rest of those and I'll come back to you guys. So I've done a little bit of extra detailing. So with the brickwork, I followed those lines straight around, making sure to stagger them like I did with this brickwork here. So I've now got the inside of that bridge done. And then what I've decided to do was mirror the same thing on the bottom. So this bit was a little bit more difficult to do, but basically what we do is we found the distance of the inside ring, each of these points. We found out how far away they were from the edge of the page, and then I found the same markings further down, so I marked each distance away, and that gave us the point mirroring the edge of the brickwork. And then I used my 1 point perspective just to line up each row. So like this line here will match up this line with this line, and so on and so forth. And then I just created the same brickwork on the inside. And with the reflection of the water though, this bit will start going a bit transparent, a bit sort of clear, so we don't have to worry too much about the lower part. But while I am here, some of the brickwork that's on this part, sort of this lower section of the bridge, will be reflected. So what we need to do is find out the distances of these first few rows away from that central line we drew earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find this lower line and then the next 2 rows, just so I can continue those 3 rows across on this lower part here. Actually, we'll make it 4. So the first 4 lines that we see. So if we know how far away the bottom row is, so that is 1.85. We'll carry that one down below that line again, and we'll mark 1.85 again. And then we know that each brick height is 1 centimetre, so all I'll do is I'll just create another 3 lines going 1 centimetre down every time. That's our 4, and then we'll just do the same on the other side as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to join those lines up together. And from there we just need to add in the brickwork again, so going off our lines that we've created, we just have to mirror whatever's on this top bit down below again. So I'm just going to add in those. So all of this technically will be erased, but what we'll do is we'll add in some of the marks for where the brickwork is. And what's good with the lines that we've created for the perspective is technically we can continue these lines straight across if we wanted. I'll just show you a demonstration. Lines there give a perfect reflection to the water below as well, almost like this is being cut into the water. But what we're going to do is just going to erase that, just to relax it in. I don't want that. I want this whole embankment to be a solid shape. If you want like still water or a really clean reflection, glass, if you're standing on a glass floor, that would be a good way to do that one. I'll just erase some of those lines there. I'll erase this line later on as well, and this line. That is the rough bridge done. All I'm going to do now is just go into adding details along these bricks. So I just want to break them up and change their shape a little bit. And I'm going to add in a few little marks and dashes along the side here for the grass. Maybe some longer lines for like reeds and bits of water. While I'm here though, if I add in some sort of rough shapes, these shapes can be like rocks, so we'll add in more detail when we get to them. Adding in the shapes over the object, like the bridge, kind of breaks it up, because once that, let's say that line there is erased, it sort of places that rock in front, and it sort of creates the illusion that that bridge below here, this bit isn't real. So maybe adding in a few more sort of shapes like that around here. So all these things can be part of what you want to do. You can place boats, you can place objects, you can place a shopping trolley falling into the water. You could do someone fishing off the side if you did like a fishing reel coming straight down. I'm just going to create it looking quite calm and surreal, and then, you know, the imagination can add more. If anyone thinks of like anything they can add, then they can always just put stuff onto that. And with the lines towards the back, I want to show that this river is actually going somewhere other than just into the distance. So we've got the guideline for where the bridge comes into contact with the water, and I want to create some sort of river going around and joining these parts up. So behind here, I'm not just going to have the river go straight off into the distance. I think I might have it going off to the left somewhere. So with that, I'm going to use this line that I said earlier would be our horizon line, and have the river sort of swirl around and then fall behind the bridge, because the bridge will then come into contact with that point there of the bridge. And this side, I will have it come off the right, and then I want to swoop that around and still make it disappear behind the bridge. So technically this whole river is verging off into that distance there. So all of this bit will just be land mass, so I'll colour that all in and shade that part in as well. And then if I want to add any more sort of rocks and little shapes like that, I can. And if the river is flowing down, what we'll do, we'll use this one down here as our example. Then the river is going to be flowing around the rock. So any sort of lines of the water is just going to go around, because the rock is sort of displacing the water around it. So the water does want to go just straight down. Rock's not allowing that to happen. So it's going to flow around and then taper back together, sort of like a teardrop shape. So that would be the same with all the rocks, but we have to follow the 1 point perspective. So the ones on this side will be flowing diagonally right, the ones on the left diagonally left. I'll add in one more tiny detail to the bridge, and that's just going to be a slight fence along the top. So what I'm going to do is just add in some sort of rectangular posts, but because it's an old bridge, the posts are going to be quite old and worn away. So firstly, I'm going to set the groundwork for each post by just creating a line. The more diagonal, the more worn away the posts are as well. So creating them off at angles gives a more of a natural old look to them, and then different heights and spaces away. And then to add in a bit of detail, what each post will be thickened and also angled as well. So each post isn't going to be the same thickness or shape or angle. They're all going to be different in their own respect. What we're going to do is join them up with some sort of fence. So I'm going to just hook some sort of rope kind of look to them. So it's more of like a hooked rope, nothing sturdy. And then if you did want to add in a second one, then it can be added in below. So what we're going to do is add in one more hook underneath. Doesn't have to be the same shape as well, because the posts are starting to wear away, so each hook will fall under its own gravity in a slightly different way. And then from there, it's up to you whether you want to add in a 3D sort of look to them. So just adding in a secondary line at a narrower angle will create that 3D effect if you did want it. And then making sure that the angle sort of follows that 1 point perspective in some way just helps to create a bit of life on the bridge. And then what I'm going to do is add in a secondary post further behind, because this is the front post. So now we know about the same width further back will be the secondary post. So from that, we just have to determine where the angles are going to be. So that's the sort of rough height of where each post is. So we then need to determine where the secondary ones are. So it's just adding in the posts at a narrower distance to each other and also lower down as well. And then from there, we're just going to add in the ropes for that side as well. Just more hooked lines. So the only thing left to do is just to add in all the details. I'm just going to go in and add details to the rocks just to separate them up. I'm going to add in some lines to the grass. I'm going to clarify where the rocks are going to be, clean up any of the lines that are still left that we don't need anymore. And then after that, I'm just going to ink the piece, add in the shading that I want to, and then maybe add in a bit of colour. I think if I make this a nice blue, it would really make that stand out a lot. So before I do that, I'm just going to say thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon just to stay informed of any future videos that you will receive. And yeah, I hope you have a nice day. I will see you around. Thank you very much.